Commander Thorne stands on a distant hill overlooking Castle Calum at dusk, its imposing stone walls bathed in fading light. He observes the fortress through a spyglass, noting the absence of traditional defences. No archers, no boiling oil, just silent stone walls. Thorne's second-in-command, Lieutenant Cress, approaches with extreme caution, her footsteps deliberately muffled. She delivers a scroll containing intelligence about the castle's deadly enchantment, detailing previous failed sieges where entire battalions were obliterated by sonic blasts, triggered by sounds louder than whispers. Thorne reflects on King Aldric's desperate order to capture this strategic fortress, despite its seemingly impossible defence. As night begins to fall, Thorne watches his 10,000 men setting up camp in eerie silence, practicing hand signals and preparing specialised cloth-wrapped weapons and armour. The weight of the impossible mission settles on his shoulders as he contemplates how many of his men will survive the night. As final preparations for the siege are underway, an old man named Einar approaches Commander Thorne's tent. Despite guards' attempts to silently restrain him, Thorne allows the local to speak. In hushed tones barely audible over the night breeze, Einar reveals he once served as a keeper of Castle Calum's archives. He explains the enchantment was created by Queen Maeve centuries ago after her family was slaughtered in their sleep by assassins. The magic is bound to the very stones, growing stronger with each death it causes. Einar warns Thorne that the castle's current occupant, Lord Voss, has corrupted the enchantment, using it to protect his tyrannical rule over Oakhaven. When Lieutenant Cress suggests they bring Einar along as a guide, the old man reveals a horrifying secret. He shows them his severed tongue, cut out by Lord Voss to prevent him from speaking the castle's weaknesses. Before leaving, Einar presses an ancient parchment into Thorne's hands, containing partial instructions for navigating the castle's interior. As Einar disappears into the night, Thorne realises the siege has become even more complicated than he initially believed. Commander Thorne addresses his army through a series of elaborate hand signals, dividing them into specialised units, each with distinct objectives. The elite Shadow Unit, led by Lieutenant Cress, will infiltrate through the castle's water supply. The Distraction Unit under Captain Mercer will create strategic diversions at the eastern wall. The main force with Thorne will attempt the most dangerous approach, the front gate. Sergeant Dawn, the army's most skilled scout, reports back with hand signals about guard rotations and structural weaknesses. As midnight approaches, Thorne faces his personal crisis. His chronic cough, worsened by the damp night air, threatens to expose their position and trigger the castle's deadly defence. He swallows a bitter herbal concoction prepared by the army's healer, knowing it will numb his throat, but also dull his senses when he needs them most. The army begins its advance toward Castle Calum, moving across the moonlit field with supernatural silence, each soldier carrying the weight of knowing a single misstep could mean death for them all. As the army approaches Castle Calum's outer perimeter, they encounter a hooded figure waiting in the shadows. The figure introduces herself through hand signals as Lyra, once Lord Voss's court musician, and now a fugitive. Lieutenant Cress immediately distrusts her, signalling to Thorne that this could be a trap. But Thorne recognises the desperation in Lyra's eyes. Using a special writing slate and chalk, Lyra explains she has survived within the castle for years by mastering the art of perfect silence and can guide them through the servants' passages. She demonstrates an uncanny ability to move without making the slightest sound, and reveals she has developed a system of musical hand signals that can communicate complex messages silently. Thorn realizes Lyra is the mentor they need to survive inside the Whisper Fortress. She teaches Thorn and his key officers crucial techniques for moving silently across different surfaces within the castle and warns them about specific rooms where the enchantment is strongest. As dawn approaches, Thorn must decide whether to trust this mysterious woman with the lives of his entire army. The final hour before the siege begins, Commander Thorn oversees the specialized equipment preparations. Sergeant Dawn demonstrates the cloth-wrapped weapons, swords bound in black wool to muffle the ring of steel, arrows with special dampening fletching, and grappling hooks wrapped in layers of felt. Lieutenant Cress distributes the silence armor, leather reinforced with thin metal plates, joints packed with horsehair to prevent creaking, and boots with soles made of layered fabric and resin. Lyra teaches the soldiers how to move in perfect harmony, timing their steps to coincide with natural sounds like wind gusts that might mask accidental noises. Captain Mercer prepares sound-dampening devices, clay pots filled with sand to throw as distractions. Thorn struggles with his persistent cough, forcing down more of the bitter medicine that clouds his mind but quiets his throat. As the sky begins to lighten with pre-dawn glow, Thorn observes his 10,000 men transformed into an army of shadows. He gives the final signal, 5 fingers spread, then close to a fist, and the silent siege of Castle Calum begins. The Shadow Unit, led by Lieutenant Cress, approaches the castle's water supply, a narrow aqueduct running beneath the eastern wall. Following Lyra's guidance, they time their movements with the changing of Lord Voss's guards. The first casualty comes when a young soldier, Private Ellis, slips on the wet stones. His startled gasp triggers a localized sonic blast that pulverizes his body and 2 nearby men into red mist. The remaining unit freezes in terror as dust and blood settle around them. Lieutenant Cress maintains iron discipline, using Lyra's hand signals to calm her rattled troops. Inside the castle, Lord Voss's personal guard, the Silence Keepers led by Commander Rook, are alerted by the disturbance. Rook, a towering figure with a face half covered by a leather mask, dispatches scouts to investigate without making a sound. Meanwhile, Commander Thorn and the main force witness the deadly blast from their position, the reality of the enchantment's power now brutally demonstrated. Thorn signals for the advance to continue despite the loss, knowing hesitation will only lead to more deaths. Commander Thorn's main force reaches the outer courtyard as Lieutenant Cress's Shadow Unit secures the eastern passage. Captain Mercer deploys the distraction unit to the western wall, using sand-filled clay pots to create controlled, silent diversions. Inside the castle, Lyra introduces Thorn to 2 allies who have been working against Lord Voss from within. Eliza, a kitchen servant with access to the Lord's chambers, and Finn, a stable boy who knows every hidden passage in the fortress. Thorn learns that Lord Voss maintains a cadre of mute servants, their tongues removed to ensure they cannot trigger the castle's defences accidentally. Eliza reveals through sign language that Lord Voss possesses an amulet, allowing him to speak normally within the castle without triggering the enchantment. As they plan their next move in the shadows of the Great Hall, Sergeant Dawn spots Commander Rook and a patrol of Silence Keepers approaching their position. The group presses themselves against the cold stone walls, barely breathing as the enemy passes within inches of their hiding spot. Guided by Finn, Commander Thorne and Lieutenant Cress infiltrate Castle Caelum's ancient library while Captain Mercer maintains the perimeter. The vast chamber contains thousands of scrolls and tomes, with dust-covered shelves reaching to the vaulted ceiling. Lyra indicates they must find Queen Maeve's original spellbook to understand the enchantment's full nature. As they search, Thorne discovers hidden architectural plans revealing Castle Caelum was built atop a natural acoustic chamber, a cave system that amplifies and channels sound. Lieutenant Cress uncovers a journal describing how the enchantment grows stronger with each death, explaining why previous sieges only made the castle more deadly. Sergeant Dawn signals urgently from his lookout position. Commander Rook and a larger contingent of Silence Keepers are conducting a systematic search of the castle, moving closer to the library. While attempting to retrieve a crucial scroll from a high shelf, Finn loses his balance. Lieutenant Cress lunges to catch a falling candlestick before it hits the stone floor, slicing her hand in the process. She bites down on her lip until it bleeds, suppressing a cry of pain as blood drips silently onto the ancient texts. Tensions rise as Commander Thorne's forces secure the castle's lower levels. Using the silent communication system developed by Lyra, Thorne receives reports of strange occurrences. Doors found unlocked that should be barred. Guard patrols appearing where none were expected. Lieutenant Cress suspects a traitor among their ranks, her suspicion falling on Eliza, who had unexplained access to Lord Voss's chambers. Captain Mercer believes Finn is too familiar with the castle's defences to be trusted. Sergeant Dawn reports multiple soldiers have disappeared while securing the western corridor. Paranoia spreads through whispered accusations as soldiers begin to doubt each other's loyalty. Lyra attempts to maintain unity, but her mysterious past raises questions about her own motives. The psychological pressure of maintaining perfect silence for hours compounds the stress, causing some soldiers to exhibit signs of breaking. Commander Thorne must resolve these suspicions while keeping absolute silence, using only hand signals and written notes to prevent a deadly confrontation among his own forces. Meanwhile, the night grows darker as storm clouds gather above Castle Caelum, promising thunder that could mask their movements or trigger the castle's deadly defense if they're caught in the open. A shocking discovery changes everything when Commander Thorne's forces reach the castle's central chamber. There they find an enormous crystalline structure pulsing with faint blue light, the physical manifestation of Queen Maeve's enchantment. Surrounding it are the preserved bodies of failed invaders, their flesh turned to stone in the moment they triggered the castle's defense. Lieutenant Cress recognizes the insignias of 3 different armies that attempted sieges over the centuries. Lyra reveals the devastating truth through silent gestures and written notes. Lord Voss isn't just using the enchantment, he's feeding it. The bodies of his political enemies line the walls, each execution strengthening the castle's deadly power. Captain Mercer discovers evidence that King Aldrich sent them not to capture the castle, but to destroy the enchantment entirely, a detail Thorne was never told. The mission parameters have completely changed. As they process this revelation, Sergeant Dawn signals frantically from his lookout position. Commander Rook has discovered their main force in the outer courtyard, and Lord Voss himself is descending from his tower chambers, wearing the amulet that allows him to speak freely within these silent halls. The siege has been compromised, and they are trapped in the heart of the deadly fortress. As Lord Voss mobilizes his forces, Commander Thorne retreats with his core team to a hidden alcove where they can whisper safely. Here, Thorn reveals his haunted past to Lieutenant Cress. He was once a young soldier in the last failed siege of Castle Calum 15 years ago. He survived only because his commanding officer pushed him into a drainage ditch seconds before a sonic blast obliterated their unit. The commander's sacrifice has driven Thorn's military career and his acceptance of this seemingly impossible mission. Lyra shares her connection to the castle through written notes. Her mother was one of Queen Maeve's descendants, tasked with maintaining the enchantment as protection, not as a weapon. Lord Voss discovered this lineage and forced Lyra to help him corrupt the magic before she escaped. Captain Mercer reports that several of their soldiers have been captured, and Sergeant Dawn confirms that Commander Rook is interrogating prisoners in the dungeon, not through questions, but through silent torture techniques developed specifically for Castle Calum. Thorn's chronic cough worsens as the medicine wears off, forcing him to make a critical decision. Take more of the mind-dulling mixture or risk triggering the castle's defense with an involuntary sound. Crisis erupts when Commander Rook discovers the Shadow Unit's position in the Eastern Passage. Using specialized silent weapons, crossbows with dampened mechanisms, and blades designed to kill without allowing victims to cry out, Rook's Silence Keepers ambush Lieutenant Cress's forces. In the ensuing chaos, Eliza is captured and dragged away. Commander Thorn, operating with dulled senses from his cough medicine, must reorganize his scattered forces using only hand signals. Captain Mercer's distraction unit creates a series of controlled diversions using sand-filled containers dropped from the ramparts, drawing some of Rook's men away. Lyra reveals her most valuable secret. She can produce specific tones that temporarily neutralize the enchantment in small areas, creating safe zones where normal movement is possible. This ability comes at a physical cost to her, each use causing her visible pain as the magic is connected to her bloodline. Sergeant Dawn returns with intelligence that Lord Voss has moved the central crystal to his personal chambers in the highest tower, making their mission exponentially more difficult. As they regroup, they witness a silent execution in the courtyard below. One of their captured soldiers forced to scream, triggering a sonic blast that turns both the victim and 3 nearby Silence Keepers to bloody mist, demonstrating Lord Voss's ruthless commitment to maintaining his power even at the cost of his own men. Disaster strikes when a section of Castle Calum's ancient ceiling collapses, separating Commander Thorn from the main group. Captain Mercer and half their remaining forces are trapped on the other side of the rubble with no silent way to communicate. As Thorn, Lieutenant Cress, and Lyra seek an alternate route, they witness Lord Voss addressing his assembled Silence Keepers in the Great Hall, speaking normally thanks to his protective amulet. They learn his ultimate plan: to expand the enchantment beyond the castle walls to encompass all of Oakhaven, creating a kingdom where he controls who has the right to speak. Sergeant Dawn attempts to rejoin them, but is cornered by Commander Rook. In the ensuing silent struggle, Dawn is mortally wounded. Unable to make a sound as he dies, he uses his last strength to write a blood message revealing the location of a hidden passage to the tower. Lieutenant Cress discovers that Finn has disappeared, seemingly betraying their position to Lord Voss's forces. With their forces scattered, their guide missing, and the castle on high alert, Thorn faces the darkest moment of the siege. His cough medicine completely worn off, he struggles to suppress the building spasm in his lungs as they hide in a narrow passage with Silence Keepers searching mere feet away. Isolated and hunted, Commander Thorn confronts his deepest fears as he, Lieutenant Cress, and Lyra hide in an abandoned chapel within Castle Caelum. The strain of maintaining perfect silence for hours has taken a psychological toll on them all. Thorn's suppressed cough has damaged his lungs, causing him to spit blood into a cloth. Lieutenant Cress's hand wound from the library has become infected, the pain nearly unbearable but which she must endure in silence. Lyra reveals through written notes that using her neutralizing tones is slowly killing her. Each use drains her life force as the enchantment was designed to be powered by her family's blood. Through the chapel's stained glass window they observe the courtyard where Captain Mercer and the remaining troops are being systematically surrounded by silence keepers. With no way to warn them, Thorn must watch helplessly as his men are trapped. In this moment of despair, Lieutenant Cress discovers hidden symbols carved beneath the chapel's altar. Queen Maeve's original instructions for controlling the enchantment, different from what Lyra was taught. Thorn realizes they've been approaching the mission incorrectly. The castle's defense isn't triggered by any sound above a whisper, but specifically by sounds made with intent to harm. The enchantment was designed to detect malice, not volume. This revelation offers a new strategy, but implementing it requires something seemingly impossible in their situation: trust. Following the chapel's hidden markings, Commander Thorn, Lieutenant Cress, and Lyra discover a secret chamber beneath Castle Caelum containing Queen Maeve's tomb. The walls are covered with the true history of the enchantment. It was created not merely as defense, but as a test of character. Those who approach with violence in their hearts trigger the castle's wrath, while those with peaceful intentions can speak freely. Lord Voss corrupted this magic by feeding it with violent deaths, twisting its purpose. Lyra realizes her mother taught her limited knowledge to prevent the enchantment from being fully exploited. As they absorb this revelation, Finn reappears, revealing he wasn't a traitor, but was captured and escaped, bringing Eliza with him. Eliza, though badly beaten, has critical intelligence. Lord Voss's amulet doesn't protect him from the enchantment. He's immune because he's another descendant of Queen Maeve's line, a distant cousin to Lyra. The crystal in the tower is the heart of the enchantment, and destroying it will end the castle's deadly defense, but only a blood descendant can approach it safely. Thorn develops a daring new plan requiring perfect coordination between all their scattered forces. As they prepare to implement it, Commander Rook discovers their hiding place. In the ensuing silent confrontation, Lieutenant Cress engages Rook in hand-to-hand combat, communicating her moves to Thorn through their silent hand signals, while Lyra and the others escape with the crucial knowledge. Commander Thorn implements his bold new strategy, establishing a whisper chain throughout Castle Caelum. Using Lyra's musical hand signals, messages are relayed silently from soldier to soldier, reuniting their scattered forces. Lieutenant Cress, having barely survived her encounter with Commander Rook, rejoins Thorn with valuable intelligence about Rook's patrol patterns. Captain Mercer's distraction unit creates a series of coordinated diversions throughout the lower levels, drawing silence keepers away from critical paths. Thorn reveals his plan. They will not try to maintain silence anymore. Instead, they will approach the crystal with genuinely peaceful intentions, speaking normally but without malice, testing the true nature of the enchantment. Those who cannot purge violence from their hearts will create diversions in distant parts of the castle. Lyra will lead Thorn to the crystal while Lieutenant Cress secures their escape route. Finn and Eliza provide detailed information about Lord Voss's chambers and the guards protecting the crystal. As dawn approaches, Thorn addresses his remaining forces through the whisper chain, preparing them for the final push. Each soldier is given a specific role and timing, creating a complex choreography of movements throughout the castle. The storm that has been building outside finally breaks, thunder rumbling above Castle Calum, nature itself providing cover for their most dangerous gambit. The final assault begins as Commander Thorn, Lyra, and a small team ascend toward Lord Voss's tower, while Captain Mercer leads a bold diversion in the courtyard. Lieutenant Cress positions soldiers at key junctions throughout the castle, ready to relay signals or intercept silence keepers. As they climb the tower's spiral staircase, they encounter increasingly powerful manifestations of the enchantment, stone faces emerging from walls, whispering warnings and threats. Lyra uses her ability to temporarily neutralize small areas, each use visibly draining her strength. They reach the tower's antechamber to find Commander Rook waiting with his elite guards. Instead of attacking silently, Thorn implements their new strategy. He speaks aloud, calmly and without aggression, stating their intention to end Lord Voss's corruption of the castle's magic. The enchantment doesn't trigger, confirming their theory about malicious intent. Confused by this approach, Commander Rook attacks anyway, triggering a devastating sonic blast that decimates his own forces while leaving Thorn's team unharmed. In the aftermath, they find Lord Voss in his chamber, standing before the massive crystal pulsing with corrupted energy. Voss reveals he's been aware of their approach and has accelerated his plan to extend the enchantment beyond the castle. As a blood descendant, he begins a ritual to permanently bond with the crystal, his voice rising in a chant that makes the very stones of Castle Calum vibrate with dangerous energy. The confrontation reaches its climax in Lord Voss's tower chamber as the enchantment crystal pulses with chaotic energy. Commander Thorn approaches Lord Voss directly, speaking in normal tones without triggering the castle's defense, explaining that he understands the enchantment's true purpose now. Voss, enraged by this revelation, attacks Thorn with a blade, his violent intent immediately triggering a localized sonic blast that throws him against the wall but leaves Thorn unharmed. Lieutenant Cress arrives with reinforcements, reporting that Captain Mercer has secured the lower levels of the castle. Lyra approaches the crystal, recognizing the corrupted form of her family's magic. She reveals that, as a direct descendant of Queen Maeve, she can reset the enchantment to its original purpose, but doing so will require a blood sacrifice. Lord Voss, recovering from the blast, lunges for the crystal, claiming his blood right as a distant relative. In the ensuing struggle, both Lyra and Voss place their hands on the crystal simultaneously. The chamber fills with blinding light as the crystal recognizes two competing bloodline claims. The enchantment itself becomes unstable, sending shockwaves throughout Castle Calum. Stones crack and ceiling beams splinter as the castle begins to tear itself apart. Thorn must make an impossible choice, attempt to save Lyra, who is now physically bonded to the crystal, or evacuate his remaining forces before the castle collapses entirely. As the crystal's light intensifies to unbearable brightness, a deafening sound unlike anything they've heard before emanates from its core, the enchantment itself screaming as it's torn between two masters. In the aftermath of the crystal's destruction, Castle Calum stands partially collapsed, but finally free of its deadly enchantment. Commander Thorn surveys the damage from the courtyard, where soldiers now speak freely without fear for the first time in centuries. Lieutenant Cress oversees the treatment of the wounded, including Captain Mercer, who was trapped under falling debris during their escape from the tower. Lord Voss's body is recovered from the rubble, his flesh turned to stone by the enchantment's final defense against his corrupted intent. Lyra has survived but is fundamentally changed. The crystal's energy has left her unable to speak above a whisper, a permanent reminder of her sacrifice. The remaining Silence Keepers, now without purpose, surrender to Thorn's forces. Commander Rook is found alive but broken, the enchantment having shattered his mind when it collapsed. King Aldric's messengers arrive, revealing the full truth of their mission. The king knew of the enchantment's dual nature and sent Thorn specifically because of his experience with the previous siege and his capacity for approaching problems without malice. Thorn realizes the king tested not just his military prowess, but his character. As they prepare to leave Castle Caelum, Thorn must decide whether to recommend destroying the fortress entirely or preserving it as a monument to both the dangers of corrupted power and the strength found in restraint. 3 days after the siege, Commander Thorn leads his remaining forces away from Castle Caelum. Of the 10,000 men who began the mission, fewer than 7,000 have survived. Lieutenant Cress walks beside Thorn, her hand bandaged but healing. Captain Mercer follows on a stretcher, his legs crushed in the castle's collapse but his spirit unbroken as he loudly recounts their victory to anyone who will listen. The sound of his voice a celebration of their freedom from silence. Lyra chooses to remain at Castle Caelum with Finn and Eliza, establishing a small community dedicated to restoring the fortress to its original purpose as a sanctuary rather than a weapon. Before departing, Thorn presents Lyra with a royal decree from King Aldric, granting her ownership of the castle and surrounding lands as the last true descendant of Queen Maeve. As they march home, Thorn reflects on how the mission transformed him and his understanding of power. True strength lies not in the ability to silence others, but in knowing when to speak and when to listen. His chronic cough has subsided, as if the castle's magic recognized and healed this threat to his survival. The soldiers, no longer bound by the need for silence, sing victory songs as they march through the forests of Oakhaven, their voices carrying through the trees like a promise of a new era where words are valued rather than feared. 1 year after the siege of Castle Caelum, Commander Thorn, now Lord Thorn after being granted a title by King Aldric, returns to the fortress for the first time. The castle has been partially rebuilt under Lyra's direction, the dangerous enchantment replaced with a memorial garden where the names of those lost in the siege are carved into stone markers. Lieutenant Cress, recently promoted to commander of her own battalion, accompanies him, their shared experience having forged an unbreakable bond. They find Lyra has established a school of silent combat and communication, teaching Finn and others the techniques that proved so valuable during their mission. Though Lyra still cannot speak above a whisper, her influence has spread throughout Oakhaven as her methods of silent communication are adopted by the kingdom's scouts and diplomatic corps. As night falls, Thorn notices something strange. In certain corridors of the restored castle, whispers seem to echo longer than they should, as if fragments of the original enchantment linger in the stones. Lyra confirms his suspicion, revealing that while the deadly aspect is gone, the castle still remembers its purpose of discerning intent. Those who enter with malice in their hearts report hearing ghostly whispers warning them away. In the highest tower, now rebuilt as an observatory, Thorn, Cress, and Lyra stand in comfortable silence, watching stars appear above Oakhaven. Thorn realizes some battles are won not through force but through understanding, and some victories are measured not by conquered territory but by the silence that follows, not a silence of fear but one of peace.